Hi, I'm Li Hao. So a while ago, I was working on the Svelte store videos and I was come across this library called Valtio, which is a proxy state library for React, as well as you can use it with a vanilla JavaScript. So it's caught my eyes because it can turns a normal object into a self-aware proxy. What it means is that you can call this call proxy with any object. For example, in this case, you call proxy with count text hello. It will return you a proxy, which this proxy is self-aware, which means that you can mutate it from anywhere. You can change it anywhere you want, assuming it as like a normal JavaScript object. You can do increments and things like that. And then you can subscribe from anywhere of the change of this variable. For example, in this case, you call subscribe with the state. This state is the proxy object, and you can pass in another function in as a callback, and this function will be called whenever the state is being mutated. So every time when you change this state from anywhere, mutate it anywhere you like, this function will be notified, and then you can call if a state to let you know that that this function has been updated. This object has been mutated, and you should do something about it. So this caught my eyes, and I was thinking that to better understand how it works, I'm thinking about implementing it myself. So this is the way that I learned about something, is that anytime when I look at something, I try to imagine how it's going to be implemented under the hood. I try to write it myself, implement it myself, and then anytime when I hit a roadblock, I'll read the source code of that library and figure it out where I'm missing it, and then learn from it. I think it's easier than read it directly. I guess that is slightly drier. It's a bit hard to appreciate all the code over there, because some of them maybe is there just to handle some special edge cases, and you don't appreciate it unless you encounter it yourself. So this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you as well. This is what I'm going to do, is that I am going to implement these two methods, which is the proxy and the subscribe, and try to figure out how it's being implemented. We're going to figure it out together. So my best guess is that this is using an API called Proxy from JavaScript ES6. Since it's already telling us straight up that it's using some sort of proxy, it's proxy state, right? So I'm gonna use proxy to implement this, and we'll see how it goes. So first thing is I'm gonna implement two functions. So over here I will set up a code sandbox. I'm gonna write two function proxy. So this function takes in a normal object. Let's say object obj, and should return a new proxy. Yeah, because it returns a proxy, right? Return new proxy. And then I have another function called subscribe, right? I think subscribe. And this time round, subscribe takes in actually not a normal object. It's actually this state, which is a proxy. Which is a proxy object. So I'm gonna say proxy object, and the next function is a callback function. I'm gonna call back. So implement these two functions. So how do we know that what we implement over here is correct? Should we write some test case first? We go for a test-driven development. So yes, I think that is a good idea. So instead of writing our own test case, let's take a look at Valtio's test cases. I see a test folder over here. Let's figure out, maybe we can steal some test cases over here so that it tests some of the basic test cases, so that we don't have to write it ourselves, and also can better understanding actually what else besides from the API upfront. From what we can see over here is only proxy, and then change the state and call back a subscription. Any other things that we need to handle as well. Probably test cases will give a better answer. So over here, I can't tell what are the test cases that each of them actually refers to. But for best guess, I'm thinking about basic.test because hopefully that's testing the basic stuff. So basic, let's see. Oh, okay. So basic test using it imports from React. So I'm guessing it's testing actually the functionality of the proxy hook, use proxy hook. So I'm not gonna implement anything related to React over here for now. So this is not what we want. Let's leave this alone. Let's see. I'm guessing the next best guess would be something like getter or subscribe. Let's take a look at subscribe. Okay, this looks interesting. Proxy and subscribe, which is what we want to implement. So guessing maybe let's just copy this for now. I'm gonna copy all this over here. I'm gonna come over to code sandbox. And if you don't know, if you create any file that ends with a test.js or test.ts or text.tsx, this will be run as a test case by the test suite. So over here, there's actually a tab besides the browser is a test. So let me modify this first. Import from index. So if you save this and if you come over here, actually there's test suites and it will detect any file that ends with .test.js, ts, or tsx and run the test suites. You can see here all the test cases failed as expected because we haven't implemented anything. So actually we don't even have implemented proxy and subscribe. We should export them for now. Export this too. And okay, I don't think it's still working. I don't think it's working, but let's start implementing them. So if you're not familiar with proxy, proxy is an API in ES6 that allows you to wrap an object. So the first parameter over here of the proxy is actually an object. It allows you to wrap an object with proxy and then returns a new proxy instance. So this proxy instance still behaves like an object and you can use any object's API on it. So when I say object API is that when you have an object, probably you would do something like define a property on an object or delete a property from an object using delete object with a property name, or you get something from an object. So your object property, right? Object or property or object with a square brackets index of the property. Or you can use like hash, for example, object, a key is in object, right? Or object.hash key. Get all the keys, own keys will return you a list of keys, object or keys of the object, or you're gonna set a value on the object. So object or property and equals to a value to try to set a property on the object. So any of this API, any of this object API, you're gonna perform on it. You can actually trigger a function which is called a handler, which can trap all this, whatever you do on the object. You can trap them and then handle it differently if you want. For example, if you want to make your object read only, then whenever someone is trying to call a set something on your object, you trap it and then handle it, say that, okay, I don't want to change my object, and then you try an error or things like that. So that is the second parameter of your proxy, which is the handler. So over here, we're going to implement just two handlers, I think, which is good enough for now. So one is a getter and one is a setter. So which means that anytime when we have, for example, when we create proxy equals a proxy with an object, say count equals 1. Whenever we say proxy something like .count, then this getter will be called. So over here, I'm gonna the getter has actually three parameters. First is the target, second is the property, and the third is the receiver. So the target is actually this object itself, the initial object that you pass in, or rather this object, the initial object you pass in. So if we pass in as obj over here, then the target is this object, the object itself, the underlying object, and then property will be the string count, because you're accessing the property of the count property. And then receiver will be the proxy instance, which means this instance, the proxy, right? So whenever you do that, we are going to say return object target, object.property. So it's like a no op. You return this value of this object immediately when you call a get. Right. Let's remove this for now. So actually, it does not necessarily have to pass in an object over here. I can still pass in an empty object or anything over here, as long as we implement this, right? We can still get the value of the property of the object, property value of the object, because we still have the object reference over here locked in the scope. Yeah, so it's really up to us whether we want to use the target or not. So I'm not going to use target for no reason. I just feel like we probably don't need it for now, since we already have object over here. So let's see. So the next thing is actually, let's take a look at the first test case. Let's don't get ahead of ourselves and try to implement everything. Let's take a look at our first test case. So here the first test case says it should call subscriptions, should get a proxy, okay, returns to the proxy object, and then you can call a subscribe function. Oh, okay, so here we call a subscribe function on the proxy object itself, and then we can pass in a function. And then we kind of expect that this function is being called whenever we try to set something over here. So we need to have a relationship between this proxy object and the function, right? Some sort of mapping of the proxy and the function, so that when we call subscribe, we can add this function in, tie it in, and then whenever we know that something has changed, to call this function. So on top of my head, I can think of two ways. So first is that I can create a map. I'm gonna call it proxy subscribers map equals a new map. So I can create a subscribers. I create subscribers as a set, so it's easier for us to add or delete from the subscribers. And over here, I'm gonna say proxy equals to new proxy, because return it, because I want to add both the proxy sets, proxy and subscribers. So I have this map that I can link up the proxy and the subscribers, which means when I call subscribe, actually I am going to find this proxy to get this subscribers set, and then I'm going to add this callback in to that set. So yeah, this is one way I can think of, but a better but then to refine this is that when you have a map, it actually retains the memory of this proxy object and the subscribers, mainly the proxy object, which means that if the proxy object is not even in use, we need to actually remember to delete it from the map, or else it will always be retained in the memory and it cannot be garbage collected. A more memory friendly way of doing it will be actually using ES6 weak map. Weak map does not hold reference, not reference, but it does not retain it in the memory. It says that, okay, I'm still referring to it. Even if weak map is still referring to it, garbage collector can still claims or collect the proxy instance if it's not being used in anywhere else. So one better way is using a weak map, right? Let's take a look at weak map. Let's see. Supports, I think, let's see. It's pretty okay, I would say. As long as we don't use this constructor and we don't use this clear method, I think it's pretty well supported across the browsers. So one way we can use is weak map. And yeah, so I mentioned that I have two ways of doing this. So the second way of doing this is actually using something called symbol. So I can say subscribe method equals a symbol. So symbol is actually also an ES6 API introduced in ES6. It's a primitive data type, and what's cool about it is that it can be used as a key of your object. So if you have an object in JavaScript, whenever you set a key, set something as a key of that object, it automatically casts as a string because you only can have string as an object, key of the object. But actually, you can have symbol as a key of the object as well, right? This means that because whatever written from the symbol is unique, you can actually create a very unique property that as long as anyone else does not have the symbol, then you cannot access it. And then because of its unique, it allows it to prevent it to be in conflict with any other names, right? For example, if you want to add a secret property inside the object, and because you not sure whether your property name is unique enough, you have to kind of namespace it to be very long or some sort of hack to go around with it. But you can use symbol right now. So if you use symbol, then you can make sure that it will never be conflicted by crashing with any property names out there. As long as you, So symbol, and actually symbol is designed for this purpose, right? So I have a symbol method over here, and then probably I can come over here and say instead of proxy subscribers map, I'm gonna say proxy object subscribe method, and hopefully this subscribe method gives us a subscribers set, and we can call add callback. And when I say hopefully, it means that actually we should implement it. So if we come over here, if the property is subscriber method, we can return the subscribers set. Right, so this is one way using symbol or using a map. I don't have any particular preference over here. These are the two ways I can think of, and I think these are pretty good enough. So I still have to choose one, right? So I'm gonna choose maybe for now using a proxy subscribers map. Right, so I'm gonna comment this. I'm gonna leave this in the comment. I'm gonna remove it. So if you want it, the REPL, this code sandbox will be, the link to the code sandbox will be in the description so that you can uncomment it and play around with it and see how it goes. So I come over here, I add this, and then since I need to return an unsubscribe function, I'm gonna say return this, and then proxy subscribers map dot get proxy delete callback. Okay, so come over here, let's see, proxy subscribers, cannot read property add of undefined get proxy. Oh, sorry, there should be proxy object. Okay, so now we implemented the subscribe. Now next thing is we need to know when it's being called set, right? So over here, so that's implements the set method, right? So over set also have now sets is similar to the get handler. But it has one more, which is the value. So it has 4 parameters. So the first one is a target. With the same target as the get, which is this object that you pass into the proxy. There's a property, and then it has a value, and then receiver. So value is the value when you call proxy counts equals something. Then this is the value itself, right? So if you call plus plus, then it's actually a shorthand for this proxy count equals proxy count plus 1, right? So this whole thing is the value of this will be the value that you received over here, right? We're not using target, so I'm gonna say this, but I'm not using receiver as well, so I'm gonna remove it. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna actually change. First thing is actually updates the object. So I'm gonna say object of property equals to value. Okay. But over here, we also able to know that this has actually changed, right? So we can come over here and say subscribers dot for each subscriber, and then we actually notify them something has changed. Notify them. Okay, so come over here and let's take a look at our test suite. Is everything okay? Oh, okay. So set, we need to return boolean for the set handler, whether it's true or false, because to tell that whether it's successful or not. So since we have updated, so we just return true. I'll come over save. Let's clear this. Let's clear this. I think let's try and see if we can run this again. Oops, something is wrong, but I'm not really sure what. I'm gonna refresh this code sandbox. Since I've saved, should be safe. Let's see. Running test suites. Okay, so we only have 3 failed test cases. Actually, we have already passed 4, which is a good sign. Let's take a look over here. So next thing is, let's see. Should call subscription should call subscription of object property. Okay, so I can subscribe to a nested property over here. Okay. So let's take a look at our implementation. So from what we implemented, we actually just create one level of proxy. We whatever returns over here actually is we're already returning the actual value of the object property, which means that it's no longer proxy. And this thing is no longer, since it's no longer proxy, then actually when you call object subscribe to it, it is not in the subscriber map, and it's actually not a proxy at all. You can't subscribe to it, and because it's not a proxy, then actually this returns a value, and then the value object, which is not a proxy, and the object that counts you plus equals 1, not gonna get notified because you're not gonna know that it's being updated because it's not a proxy. It has no way to know, right? So one thing we need to do is that we have to return a proxy of this if it's an object. Yeah, so but we have to make sure that we don't keep creating the same proxy, right? A new proxy object. What do I mean is that, for example, this calls nested on the object once, and this calls it again. But you need to make sure that they actually we don't have to we shouldn't implement something on the getters, like creating a new proxy out of something, which means that this will create a new proxy and this will create another new proxy. So maybe we can do it in a setter instead, right? So if we are doing a setter, if we know that we are setting a property, say setting the property, if the value is an object, then we should actually make it a proxy instead, right? Because yeah, so maybe we can initialize it some way that we can call a setter, and then which means that all the object properties actually already a proxy, right? Then but we shouldn't change this object over here. So I'm guessing that whatever we are going to change actually should change it to the target itself, right? So what I mean is that if we are going to say if value is type of object, we are going to make a value equals to proxy value. We're going to do this, then we shouldn't assign this proxy value into the object itself, because you wouldn't want you wouldn't set a proxy stuff on the object. You want the actual value of it in the object itself instead. So let's see. Probably we can come over here and say we use target instead. So what this actually, whatever changes is actually applied to this new object. And probably we can also change not just this property, we can also object the property equals the pre-proxy value, obj over here. So which means that this should also return from the target. So if we are setting a object, this if the value is an object, is actually already wrapped with a proxy, so we return whatever from here, then it should be also a proxy as well. So but then this initialized with empty object, right? So then this target has no property at all and it does not return anything. So we're gonna come over here and gonna initialize that. So I'll say for I'm gonna use a very simple for key in object, and I'm gonna assign let's see, proxy key equals to object key. I think this is good for now, and let's save this. And let's take a look. Should call, so proxy is not a function. Okay, it's referring to this. So I'm gonna rename this as a proxy instance. I'll just return it as a result. I'm gonna come over here and say results. I'll save and let's take a look. Oh, okay. We passed that test. Amazing. I believe that's how it's solved. Once we make this object nested as a proxy, then we can actually listen to it and handles it. So next thing is should not rerun subscription on project. Should not rerun subscription if no change. So if we're gonna set the value, and if the value is gonna same, it shouldn't notify. Okay, that's interesting. So if I come over here and say let's see. Okay, so I should come over here and say should notify. Let's say if it's not gonna change, it's not gonna whatever we're gonna do next is pointless as well. So what we're gonna come here, short circuit it. So if object property is equals to is equals to value, now return true. Now short circuit and hopefully this returns immediately. Let's see. Subject property is not equals to value. Let's equals to value returns true. Okay, let's console out object property value and object. Okay, let's see what we have over here. Whoa, okay, there's a lot of stuff. Oh, count one equal, okay, count. Oh, we have a lot of tests. So let's come over here and say, oh wait, this, hold on a sec. Do we just pass this test but fail another? Subscriptions off. Oh, okay, actually we actually passed this test. This actually works, but then the should show if subscribing to primitive property. But this should throw an error instead. So we passed one and failed another new one. Should call, no. Should call subscription of object property. Okay, so this fails instead. Okay, let's come over here and say it dot only. Then we just run this test only and see what we have in the console log. So nested, so the object has nested accounts. I'm gonna set in count, count. Hold on, property is this and value is. Oh, okay. Then we are not initialized at anything at all. Hold on. So this should. Now I know what's happening. So we come over here and then. So this is not being. This initially this value is actually equals to this value because. Yeah, so in the initialization phase, this is wrong. I guess we can come over here and say target. Use target instead. And we can safely use target because if it's an object, unlikely it's gonna be the same, or maybe not. I'm not really sure. But if you're using targets, then we know for sure that initially it's not gonna be true. So but this handles for primitive well, because if it's primitive, the target is a primitive value as well. It should be equal to the same. Oh, hold on. We passed this test. So let's remove this only and come back again. And let's take a look. Okay, so we passed that test. Right, so what over here is that target initially is an empty object. So it has all this property value of this target is undefined, so it's not gonna pass on the first run. Yeah. And if you kind of set it again, then yeah, this will be true. And we can't use object because it initially has the same value. Then you can't set it to be. You skip that setting, right? So. But I don't think this is actually accurate, right? What if you are setting the same property with the same object reference, and then that will not be the case. So I think we should still use object, but we can keep a flag. So I'm gonna say let initialize false, and I'm gonna check this first. And if it's not initialized, we ignore this checking. And we come over here, once we set all the keys, we can say this is true. So this handles both the case. This still works as object property, and this handles the case, right? So for those who are not sure, what I'm referring to is that what if I have proxy? Let's see. I think I should add a new case over here. So over here, should not rerun, right? Over here, I'm gonna copy this. Let's say this is inner count 0. So it does not matter what, actually it does not matter what this object is. Make sure that the instance is the same. I'm gonna come over here and say this count is inner. And I'm gonna set this the same thing again. And it should not be called again. This should be the same, right? We pass this test. But if just now what we do, if we come over here and say target instead, then that function is being called, because this returns us a proxy object, but whatever you're passing in is a normal object. Definitely it will not be the same, but actually it's the underlying value of that proxy object is the same. So that's, if you check initialize, so we should check it with the object, the property, and we can, but then this will not work when you're initializing, when you are first setting it, because the object whatever over here is the same as whatever in the object key. So we have an initialize flag, and we guard against, and we don't check this thing first before we initialization, and then we set this flag to be true. So in future we will check this. Right, next is that we should batch updates. So let's take a look at this test. When you say batch update, it says that when you change properties multiple times, it should only be called once. And you can look at here, it says proxy resolve, which means that actually it's kind of assumes that actually something has actually the updates, the subscribe callback actually happens on the next tick, on the next promise tick. So we can actually batch all the notifying over here. We can have it batch it over here, and we do it on the next tick. So okay, so let's see. So over here we can have something like notify next. I'm gonna say notify next over here, a function. Gonna have a function. I think I can even do it offside over here. I'm gonna say notify next. So to be notified is an empty array. Okay, I think I just do a set. It's easier to clear it. Over here I'm gonna say to be notified dot push fn and promise dot resolve dot then. So this happens on the next tick, and over the next tick I'm gonna call flush, which is another function, flush, which we're gonna come over here and we're gonna call all the functions in here and then we clear the sets. So yeah, so this will batch it, all of them. So even if you call this notify next multiple times, then you actually have this flush being pending multiple times, right? But then the first time when you call flush, you will call the functions and clear it, and next time when you call flush, you will not call it anymore. And good thing about using a set is that you can call this the same function. You can push it multiple times. Wait, this is not push, this is add. You can add it multiple times. You only have one instance of that function in the set, so that you can make sure that it will be called once in the whole flush, right? And so I'm going to call notify next over here, notify next subscriber. Save this and let's see, run the test suite, and we pass the test suite. So is this all? Not really, but at least we take a look at we kind of able to implement a very simple proxy and subscribed. So I think as a recap, let's take a look at the test case. Actually, we didn't really look into the test case, and we managed to pass all of them, which is amazing. So the first thing is we should call subscriptions. Actually, we looked at that before. We look at we can create a proxy object from here, subscribe it, and then when we change it, mutate it, you'll make sure that this handler be called once. And we implement the unsubscribe method. Actually, this only tests unsubscribe, right? We remove it, we delete it from the proxy subscribers map. So so once we unsubscribe, this will not be notified because it's no longer in the set. And this is what we done over here is that we make sure that a nested object is also a proxy. We did it by doing it in the setting setter, where anytime when you set an object, we make sure that it is a proxy object. Right, and then so over here when we should throw if unsubscribe to primitive. Actually, wait. So we made it a proxy. Oh yeah, we call it a proxy, right? So a nested property over here will be handled by the nested this value. Okay, that works. And then throw if unsubscriber into a primitive property. Yeah, I think we kind of lucked out with this one. If we are trying to subscribing to this is actually not it's not available in the proxy subscribers map. Then you're calling .add on an undefined object and it throws an error. Probably we can do better over here is that if proxy subscribers map.has, then maybe we throw a better error over here. Maybe something like a proxy, right? But we lucked out on that. We didn't really implement it and we passed it out because we still passed the test case because we're calling add on undefined. So next thing is should not rerun subscriptions if no change. So we did it by adding a check to make sure that this object property if it's equals value, we return early. And then we have to do it after it's being initialized because during the initialization phase, this is actually always being true. And then should not rerun subscriptions if object, okay, this is for the object version. This is a primitive, this one we just added. And then should not cause infinite loop. So if we set it, so in the handler, if we're gonna set it again, we shouldn't notify the handler again. And I believe, let's see, I believe this is being handled. Why is it being handled? So we're gonna set the object count equals to 0. So we call the object.count in the handler. Wait, subscribe. Okay, so setter. So when we call a setter over here, this handler will be called again, but this time around the value is less than 5, right? So that's why it's not infinite loop, right? I believe maybe previously the value is not updated immediately, then this will cause infinite loop, right? So I believe if we, let's try, if we notify early before even we set the value, then probably this will end up in an infinite loop. And also we shouldn't batch it up. If we batch it up, then we already update the value over here, right? So if I call it early, let's see. I believe this will end up with an error. Okay, a lot of test cases fail. Come over here. Let's only save this. Oh, this is still pass. I'm not quite sure how do we just dodge the bullet. But I think we still, because when we call subscriber, and then we set the value again. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why. So if we set to 10, and because we keep notifying, in the handler we keep checking is bigger than 5, we keep setting to 0, but on every setter we trigger the handler first. And if we trigger the handler first, then it's still being 5, it's still being 10, and then we call the handler again. Should end up with an infinite loop, but it's not. I'm not quite sure how we dodged that, but I'm guessing the actual fix will be having these subscribers coming later and also batch later on, so we have the value updated early beforehand, and it will not lead to an infinite loop. Now let's comment this out. Come here should batch update. So we handle this by using a batch like notify next, and then we push everything to be notified in set. So this also will help us to remove any duplicate functions. The same function will be called once. And because we use promise.resolve, this will batch all of them and then actually call them in the next tick together, right? Without this promise resolve, we actually don't know like when we actually need to flush it, and then the set itself is useless also. We can't really know that how far back we are going to look at is like not, it's being called and we shouldn't call it now again, right? So yeah, so we kind of handle all of them. We pass all the test cases. Let's take a look at any other test cases that we can look at again. This sounds interesting, getter, as I mentioned earlier, and but it's still using React, so I don't think we're gonna implement anything about React. And I feel that we actually achieved our goal so far. We actually tried dip our toes into how to implement proxy based reactivity kind of states stuff, where we can return a proxy object from an API, and then we can listen to any changes made on the proxy object itself, and we come across ways to subscribing to the proxy object, and we also handle some edge cases here and there. For example, how to make like a nested object to be a proxy object as well, and how to batch the listeners and notify them only once if we update them in subsequent, right? So I think that's good enough for today, and I think hopefully, and I feel it's a fruitful one. So I hope that you learned something. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and if you have anything that I'm unclear of, please comment down below. And as always, subscribe to my channel so that more quality videos coming out soon and you get notified about it. Right? So see you. Bye bye.